I had searched deep within my heart and spirit, and I wanted to...
Prince wasn't just a musician. He was a force of nature. From the moment he burst onto the scene, he broke every rule in the book, mastering dozens of instruments to create the legendary Minneapolis Sound. But while the world danced to his hits, Prince was always creating. He worked at a feverish pace, recording music faster than any label could release it, and hiding his most personal work away from the spotlight. Deep in the basement of his Paisley Park estate lay his greatest secret: the vault. For decades, this 6,000-pound steel room was a whisper among his inner circle, a hidden tomb for a lifetime of unreleased masterpieces. When the seal was finally broken after his death, even his closest friends were stunned by what they found waiting in the dark. So what exactly was hidden behind that door for all those years? And why did the world's most prolific artist choose to keep his greatest treasures locked away? Join us as we pull back the curtains on this one. Prince before the fame. The making of the Minneapolis Sound. Before the vault, before the fame, before the world knew him as Prince, there was a child born into rhythm. Prince Rogers Nelson entered the world on June 7, 1958, at Mount Sinai Hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Born to jazz singer Matty Della and pianist and songwriter John Lewis Nelson. Music wasn't something he discovered later in life. It was already in the room when he took his first breath. All four of his grandparents were from Louisiana, and that southern lineage carried its own pulse. Even the legendary jazz drummer Louis Hayes was family, a paternal cousin. Rhythm, melody, improvisation. It ran through the bloodline. He was named after his father's stage persona, Prince Rogers, the name John Lewis Nelson used while performing with Matty in a jazz group called the Prince Rogers Trio. The name wasn't random, it was an expectation. Years later, his father revealed on A Current Affair that he chose the name because he wanted his son to accomplish everything he himself had hoped to do. That kind of weight settles early, and as a child, Prince didn't even like it. He preferred Skipper. It felt lighter, less prophetic. But destiny has a way of circling back. Prince once revealed that he was born epileptic and suffered seizures as a child. Then, one day, he told a story that felt almost mythical in hindsight. He walked up to his mother and declared that he wasn't going to be sick anymore because an angel had told him so. Whether a miracle or a memory shaped by time, the seizures stopped. The frail child who battled his body would grow into a performer who seemed superhuman on stage. 2 years after his birth, his younger sister Tyka arrived. Tyka Nelson would also lean toward music, just like her brother. Their father encouraged it. Discipline, practice, structure. That was the language of the house. Both parents were members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and faith quietly framed the household. By 7, Prince had already written his first song, Funk Machine, on his father's piano. While most children were still learning scales, he was building grooves. You can almost picture it. Small hands on ivory keys, absorbing everything he had watched his father play, already twisting it into something new. Then came the fracture. At 10, his parents divorced. The rhythm of the household shifted. His mother remarried Hayward Baker and had another son, Omar. But Prince's relationship with his half-brother was tense and volatile enough that he began moving back and forth between homes, sometimes with his father, sometimes with his mother and stepfather. Stability became temporary. Music became constant. It was Baker who took him to see James Brown live in concert. That moment mattered. Watching Brown command a stage with discipline and fire planted something deep. Prince would later credit Baker with improving the family's finances, but that concert may have been the real inheritance, the blueprint for control, precision, and spectacle. For a brief time, he lived with his father, who bought him his first guitar. That instrument became an extension of his body. But the peace didn't last. After being thrown out by his father, Prince moved into the basement of the Anderson family. Neighbors who gave him something he had been missing: steadiness. In that basement, possibility expanded. He bonded with their son, André Simon, who would later become one of his earliest collaborators. Together, they weren't just teenagers playing around. They were building a future in real time. School came and went in the background. He briefly attended Bryant Junior High, then transferred to Central High School in Minneapolis. He played football, basketball, and baseball, and even landed on Central's junior varsity basketball team. The image clashes beautifully with what the world would later see: lace, heels, silk shirts. But Prince loved basketball. He would continue playing recreationally as an adult, long after arenas replaced school gyms. Movement mattered to him in more ways than one. He trained in classical ballet at the Minnesota Dance Theater through the Urban Arts program of Minneapolis Public Schools. That discipline sharpened his physical control. Every spin, every split, and every impossible stage glide years later had roots in those early lessons. And when the Joffrey Ballet struggled financially in the 1990s, Prince quietly stepped in to help save it. Dance had shaped him. He didn't forget. Then, in 1973, he crossed paths with Jimmy Jam. Jam saw it immediately: the work ethic, the mastery of multiple instruments, the hunger. This wasn't just talent. It was velocity. Prince wasn't dabbling. He was accelerating. By the time the world met him, the pieces were already in place. A child named after ambition, a body that fought illness and won, a basement that became a laboratory, a guitar that became armor, a dancer's discipline woven into a musician's soul. The Minneapolis Sound didn't appear overnight. It was forged in fractured homes, church pews, junior varsity courts, concert arenas, and basement rehearsals. From 94 East to Purple Rain, the ascent of a relentless visionary. By the mid-1970s, the basement rehearsals were no longer enough. The talent had outgrown the room. What Prince needed now was a doorway. That doorway came in 1975, when Pepe Willie, the husband of one of Prince's cousins, formed a band called 94 East. Willie brought in Marcy Ingvoldstad and Christy Lazenberry, then hired André Simon and Prince to record. Prince was still a teenager, but already operating like a seasoned musician. Willie handled most of the songwriting. Prince layered in guitar, and together they co-wrote Just Another Sucker. The tracks they cut during those sessions would later surface on Minneapolis Genius, the historic 1977 recordings. Even then, you can hear it: the hunger, the sharp edges, the refusal to blend in. In 1976, fresh out of Central High School, Prince walked into producer Chris Moon's Minneapolis studio and recorded a demo. It wasn't polished, but it didn't need to be. It was undeniable. When Moon couldn't secure a deal, he handed the tape to Minneapolis businessman Owen Husney. Husney didn't hesitate. At 19, Prince signed a management contract, stepped into Sound 80 Studios with producer David Z, and cut a new demo that would change everything. The tape, paired with a sharp press kit from Husney's ad agency, ignited interest from Warner Brothers, A&M, and Columbia. But it was Warner Brothers that made the decisive move. In 1977, Prince signed a recording contract that granted him something almost unheard of for a teenager: creative control over 3 albums, and ownership of his publishing rights. That wasn't just a deal. It was leverage. Prince and Husney left Minneapolis for Sausalito, California, where his debut album, For You, was recorded at Record Plant Studios and mixed in Los Angeles. Released on April 7, 1978, the album was a statement of autonomy. He wrote, produced, arranged, composed, and played all 27 instruments on the record, except for the lyrics to Soft and Wet, which he co-wrote with Moon. The cost of recording doubled his initial advance, but Prince wasn't thinking about budgets. He was building an identity. Soft and WT climbed to number 12 on the Hot Soul Singles chart and number 92 on the Billboard Hot 100. Just As Long As We're Together charted as well. The numbers mattered, but the deeper signal was this: he could do everything himself. And he would. Around that time, he tried molding the career of teenage singer Sue Ann Carwell after spotting her talent in the Minneapolis R&B scene. He envisioned changing her into something specific, even suggesting she adopt the name Susie Stone. She resisted. The recordings they worked on never saw the light of day. Control was part of his genius, but not everyone would move to his rhythm. Then came 1979. Prince assembled a band: Andre Simone on bass, Des Dickerson on guitar, Gail Chapman and Dr. Fink on keyboards, and Bobby Z on drums. Their first show took place at the Capri Theater on January 5th. Warner Brothers executives attended. They liked what they saw, but believed Prince needed more time. He didn't waste it. In October 1979, he released his second album, Prince. It climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Top R&B/Black Albums chart and number 22 on the Billboard 200. It went platinum. Why You Wanna Treat Me So Bad landed as a hit. I Wanna Be Your Lover sold over 1 million copies, reached number 11 on the Hot 100, and held number 1 on the Hot Soul Singles chart for 2 weeks. On January 26, 1980, he performed both songs on American Bandstand. The nation watched. The mystique deepened. But he was just warming up. The early 1980s sharpened his edge. Dirty Mind in 1980 stripped away restraint and dived headfirst into sexuality and fantasy. Controversy in 1981 leaned even harder into tension and provocation, yet beneath the surface lived something else: spirituality, yearning, and questions about identity and faith. And then, the explosion. With his band The Revolution, he released Purple Rain in 1984. The album doubled as the soundtrack to the film of the same name, which grossed nearly $70 million at the U.S. box office and earned an Academy Award for Best Original Song Score. The title track climbed to number 2. When Doves Cry and Let's Go Crazy both hit number 1. I Would Die for You, Take Me With You. And When Doves Cry broke convention by stripping away a traditional bass line, leaving space where there should have been weight. It worked. It changed the air. He became a visual icon. Curls, lace, ruffles, heels. And controversy followed. Darling Nikki stirred national debate, eventually fueling a push for parental advisory labels. Even protest became proof of his reach. In 1985, Around the World in a Day arrived with Raspberry Beret and Pop Life. In 1986, Prince delivered Kiss, a minimalist funk strike that went number 1. The album doubled as the soundtrack to Under the Cherry Moon, which he directed and starred in. After The Revolution disbanded, he released Sign O' the Times in 1987, a double album forged from shelved projects and sharp commentary. The title track hit number 3 on pop charts and #1 in R&B. You Got the Look, a duet with Sheena Easton, roared to #2. Critics called it one of his greatest works. Sales in the US lagged, but Europe embraced it fully. He followed with Lovesexy in 1988, then the 1989 Batman soundtrack, which produced Bat Dance, a number. One hit wrapped in split personas and theatrical chaos. The early 90s ushered in the new power generation, a fusion of R&B, hip-hop, jazz, and soul. Diamonds and Pearls in 1991 rose to #3 on the Billboard 200 and delivered Cream, Get Off, and the aching title ballad. That same year, he signed a $100 million deal with Warner Brothers, the largest of its kind at the time, granting him unprecedented freedom. But tension simmered. The 1992 Love Symbol album underperformed. Frustration with Warner grew. In 1993, he changed his name to an unpronounceable glyph, a fusion of male and female symbols. The world called him the artist formerly known as Prince. He appeared with the word slave written across his face, protesting what he saw as corporate control. Still, he created. The Gold Experience in 1995 gave him the most beautiful girl in the world. When he finally fulfilled his Warner obligations, he released Emancipation in 1996, a triple album, platinum certified and defiant in both name and scale. Through it all, one thing remained constant: control. Control over sound, control over image, control over ownership. And somewhere behind all of it, behind the contracts, the symbols, the hits, the controversy, the reinventions, the sold-out tours, and the platinum plaques, the work kept piling up. Inside Prince's passion, heartbreak, and muses. For Prince, love was never quiet. It was electric, complicated, devotional, sometimes destructive, and almost always woven directly into the music. The women who stepped into his orbit rarely left unchanged. Many became muses, some became wives, a few became chapters that still echo through the songs. He married twice in his lifetime. First to Mayte Garcia from 1996 to 2000, then to Manuela Testolini from 2001 to 2006. But long before the weddings, before the white doves and diamond symbols, there were women who helped shape the mythology. It started publicly with Denise Matthews, better known as Vanity. They met at the 1980 American Music Awards. Prince saw something in her immediately and asked her to front his new girl group, Vanity 6. Together, they were magnetic, dangerous, beautiful. In April 1983, they appeared side by side on the cover of Rolling Stone, already cemented as pop culture lightning. Years later, in her autobiography Blame It on Vanity, she would claim he was the only man she had ever truly loved. After the fame came chaos, addiction, a spiral into drugs, then a dramatic spiritual rebirth as a born-again Christian. When she died in 2016 from kidney failure at the age of 57, Prince learned of it just before taking the stage. That night, he paid tribute to the woman who had once been his creative counterpart. Their story had long ended, but the imprint remained. Then there was Anna Garcia, known as Anna Fantastic. She met Prince at just 16 during one of his London concerts in the early 1990s. A year later, she moved into his Minneapolis home. On her 18th birthday, he reportedly gifted her a pink cashmere coat, inspiration for the song Pink Cashmere, released in 1993. She became a muse during that chapter, her image and presence threaded through songs before the relationship faded. She would go on to model and appear in Playboy, stepping into her own spotlight after leaving his. But no relationship cut deeper than the one with Mayte Garcia. Prince first saw her in a video belly dancing. He was captivated. They met backstage at one of his shows and stayed in touch. 2 years later, she joined his band, and soon she was more than a performer. She was central. On Valentine's Day, 1996, they married in Minneapolis. Métis was 22. Prince was radiant with pride. She wore a necklace bearing the symbol he had adopted as his name. White doves were released as vows were exchanged. It felt cinematic, almost mythic. Their love story, intense and all-consuming, was followed by heartbreak that would quietly fracture everything. Métis became pregnant almost immediately. Their son, boy Gregory, was born with Pfeiffer syndrome, a rare skull defect. He lived only 1 week. Not long after, she suffered a miscarriage. Grief settled into the house like fog. The couple who once moved in rhythm began drifting apart. Métis later reflected that Prince had been her first crush and her first love, and that although they did not become serious until she turned 18, he had been respectful from the beginning. But respect could not shield them from loss. By 2000, the marriage was over. After Métis came interior designer Charlene Friend. She was 18 when she met Prince in a Hollywood bar. He was 14 years older. Their relationship lasted 2 years before collapsing into legal drama. She filed a lawsuit in 2003 claiming defamation and emotional distress. In her statement, she described him as someone who treated intimacy with spiritual intensity, believing sex made two people one. The case ultimately ended in Prince's favor, the court determining he was the victim of a spiteful lawsuit. Another chapter closed, this one marked by headlines instead of heartbreak. In 2001, Prince met Manuela Testolini in Minneapolis while she was working for his charity, Love for One Another. She was 24, he was 43. They married the same year. Unlike some of the women before her, Manuela had no desire to live in the glare of constant attention. She later described the marriage as eye-opening, explaining that while she never sought the spotlight, the experience allowed her to launch her own business ventures, including her production company, Gamilla. Their marriage lasted 5 years. In 2006, she filed for divorce. His attorney, Patrick Cousins, stated that the divorce was not something Prince had wanted, and that he simply hoped to resolve it peacefully. No spectacle, no public warfare, just an ending. Even in his later years, Prince's romantic life remained a quiet current beneath the music. In 2014, he was reportedly linked to British singer-songwriter Delilah after performing a string of secret gigs in London. They had known each other for 2 years, ever since he discovered her through a YouTube video and invited her to tour. Those London shows at Ronnie Scott's carried an intimate energy, with guests like Rita Ora, Kate Moss, and Noel Gallagher watching as Prince performed in close quarters. Delilah once reflected on what it felt like to sing with him, how terrifying it was to step on stage before tens of thousands of people, how her legs shook so badly she kicked off her high heels out of fear she might fall. Singing alongside him strengthened her confidence. Being near him often did that to artists. He pushed them to rise. And that was the pattern. The women in Prince's life were never just companions. They were collaborators, inspirations, reflections of different phases of his evolution. Some were immortalized in song, some were scarred by the intensity, some walked away stronger. Through it all, Prince remained a man who blurred the line between love and art. Romance fed the music. The music deepened the romance. And somewhere between devotion and distance, he kept writing, recording, and preserving pieces of himself, some for the world and some for the vault. The final weeks of Prince, rumors, reality, and the truth behind his death. In the final weeks of Prince's life, the headlines grew louder than the music. Rumors swirled, whispers hardened into tabloid claims, and behind the gates of Paisley Park, something was clearly wrong. Prince Rogers Nelson died on April 21, 2016, inside an elevator at his Paisley Park estate in Chanhassen, Minnesota. He was 57. The official cause of death was an accidental fentanyl overdose. That is the confirmed record. But almost immediately, another narrative surfaced. Reports in U.S. tabloids claimed that Prince had been diagnosed with AIDS weeks before his death. An unnamed industry source allegedly messaged friends on April 19th, stating that he was gravely ill and preparing for the end. The claims painted a grim picture: dangerously low blood counts, a body temperature dropping far below normal, severe iron deficiency, disorientation, and weakness. It was said he struggled to eat, and when he did, he couldn't keep food down. The same reports alleged he had contracted HIV in the 1990s and received an AIDS diagnosis months before his passing. There has never been official confirmation of this from medical authorities or his estate. The official cause remains fentanyl toxicity. What is known is that in the days before his death, the prince's private jet made an emergency landing in Illinois after he reportedly overdosed on Percocet. He appeared frail in public. He was seen visiting a local Walgreens pharmacy shortly before he died. An employee later described him as looking exhausted and beaten down, prompting staff to tell him they were praying for him. Faith had long been central to his life. As a Jehovah's Witness, Prince was deeply committed to his beliefs. Tabloid accounts claimed he refused certain medical treatments, believing prayer would restore him. Those claims remain part of media reporting, not medical records. 5 days after the emergency landing, he was found unresponsive in the elevator at Paisley Park. A day later, he was cremated in a private ceremony attended by only a few family members, including his sister, Tyka Nelson. There were no public spectacles, just quiet finality. Behind the scenes, another pressure had been building. Despite a catalog valued in the hundreds of millions, sources close to him claimed he faced ongoing financial strain. Prince had long refused to license his music for films, commercials, or broad catalog sales. He guarded his art fiercely. That protection came at a cost. He had recently returned to touring, including a demanding run in Australia in early 2016. A 36-hour flight is punishing for anyone. For someone reportedly dealing with chronic pain and exhaustion, it would have been brutal. Those close to him suggested he pushed himself because he needed to, not for fame, for cash flow. He was meticulous with sound, obsessive about control, and fearless with contracts. But friends hinted that business logistics did not always receive the same precision as the music. Some of his surprise shows were organized quickly, with little promotion. Some thrived. Others reportedly operated at a loss. Through it all, Prince remained consistent about one thing: his art was not for sale. He shut down lucrative licensing deals. He refused to let his back catalog become background noise in commercials. He believed ownership meant something sacred. In the end, the official record speaks clearly. An accidental fentanyl overdose ended his life. The AIDS allegations remain unverified tabloid reporting layered over an already tragic story. What remains undeniable is this: in his final months, Prince looked thinner, quieter, tired in ways that went beyond rehearsal fatigue. He was still creating, still protecting his music, still performing. And then, suddenly, the elevator doors closed. What they found inside Prince's Paisley Park vault shocked his closest friends. For years, the vault at Paisley Park wasn't just a room, it was a question. A sealed space beneath the studio where Prince Rogers Nelson recorded at a pace no one could match and stored the overflow instead of releasing it. Fans imagined it. Collaborators hinted at it. But almost no one had actually seen what was inside. After his death in 2016, that mystery could no longer stay closed. Because Prince left no will, no instructions, not even the combination. As part of the investigation into his passing, the Carver County Sheriff's Office drilled into the steel door in the basement of Paisley Park. What waited behind it stunned even people who had worked beside him for decades. Row after row of reel-to-reel masters, shelves packed tight with tapes, labeled binders, VHS cassettes cataloged with care. It wasn't chaotic, it was deliberate. An archive built quietly over decades while the world only heard the fraction he chose to release. Archivists later estimated there was enough material inside to put out a new Prince album every year for the next 100 years. That isn't a myth, that's volume. Entire songs, alternate takes, fully realized projects. Among the discoveries were original masters and a remastered version of Purple Rain, unreleased Batman-inspired recordings, a duet with Michael Jackson. The original recording of Nothing Compares to You was preserved long before it became a global hit through another voice. And then there were the details that made his inner circle pause. 67 gold bars valued at roughly $840,000. A Minnesota Twins mascot costume. 47 pairs of high-heeled ankle boots, each tagged for the Bata Shoe Museum in Toronto. The vault held music history and personal artifacts side by side, as if he had archived not just sound, but also identity. Susan Rogers, who engineered his work for over 2 decades and helped shape albums like Purple Rain and Sign of the Times, once said the vault was nearly full when she left in 1987. Row after row of everything they had done up to that point. That was decades before his death, which means most of what was uncovered had been recorded after the era many consider his commercial peak. While fans tracked chart positions and label disputes, Prince kept working, recording, filing, saving. In 2018, his estate released an annotated discography, acknowledging what the shelves made obvious. The world was only beginning to understand the full scope of his output, including countless unreleased recordings. An evolving exploration of his genius had just begun. What shocked his closest friends wasn't simply the quantity. They knew he worked relentlessly. It was the magnitude of what he chose not to share. The discipline behind it. The foresight. The steel door opened, and with it came the realization that even at his most visible, Prince had been holding most of his story in reserve. Do you think we will ever get to hear any of Prince's unreleased songs? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.